Happy Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 203, titled, oh, I forgot to change the title.
I was going to say, I was very confused.
Oh, well, much to be desired from Meier, ? Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios in North Jersey and South Jersey. It's all about New Jersey, isn't it, Nick Villano?
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing well. We're doing well over here in South Jersey.
Yes, we are. And we got a special guest tonight from the Sporting News. Bryan Murphy will be on. Good friend of the, or soon to be a good friend of the podcast. This would be his second time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We had him on last offseason.
Yeah. Good to have him back. Yeah, lots of things happening last night. Lots of chatter about last night's loss on the social media outlets. A lot of talk about Timo Meier. They're already talking about Timo Meier in the social media chat rooms right now. So, Nick, I'm sure you have a lot to talk about, so I'll let you start off as I'm changing the graphic.
Yeah, listen, I just wrote about this last night. Am I worried about Timo Meier? No. Want to know why? Here's two reasons. A, he's coming off an injury, and that's a big part of this. Clearly, Timo Meier was the best player on the ice of any player last night. There was no player who was better in the first period than Timo Meier. Not Jack Hughes, not Austin Matthews, not Jesper Bratt, not Nico Hischier. Timo Meier was dominating that game, and it was clear that he was everything the Devils were missing. The only issue is that, you know, some of the positioning of his shots wasn't perfect. But that's really it. He could have had easily 2 goals in the first period. And then, I don't know, Sam, if it's recovering from the injury or it's going from playing with Thomas Hertl. Our friend Jack Dawkins pointed this out. Thomas Hertl, 6'3", 215 pounds. He went from him to Jack Hughes, who's realistically, like 175 pounds soaking wet. Pure speed and agility. And getting used to the Lindy Ruff defensive style has been on record an issue, right? We heard he was sitting with Nico Hischier on the plane ride back from Arizona, try to get used to what is expected of him in this defensive system. Here's the deal, is that Lindy Ruff's system, and this is the conversation that we had last year. Obviously, Lindy Ruff has done a great job with his team. He's put the things into place that are necessary. But you cannot say that his system is not demanding of players. And it is hard to get into this. I've made this comparison to the West Virginia basketball press. And there's a reason why Bob Huggins, a Hall of Fame basketball coach, no longer uses the press. Because it just grinds you down. It does grind your opponents down, but your opponents have to play it once in a blue moon. You have to play it every single night. And if you're not used to that kind of a pace, you're going to get exhausted by the third period. So, am I worried about that? It depends on what the threshold is. It depends on what the goalpost is. Is the goalpost winning the Metro? Then yeah, I'm a little worried because I don't think Timo Meier is going to help this team before he hurts them. I think there's going to be a couple losses, just like last night. Last night was on a lot of people, but it was on Meier. Meier caused 2 goals against and didn't score any. And you're going to see a couple of those performances while he gets used to the system. But you got to look at the bigger picture here. What do you got, like 8 points on the Rangers? You can afford a couple losses to get this guy ready for the playoffs. And that's the main goal here. Give him 10 games to make all these mistakes and to get used to the endurance that is required of him to succeed in the Lindy Ruff system. you got to be patient. It stinks because it's March, and it feels like the playoffs are right around the corner. We're what, less than 20 games left in the season. I think we're 19 games left.
Yeah, you're correct. We played the 63rd game yesterday.
So you have less than 20 games to get this guy up to speed and ready for the biggest games he's played in years. Luckily, the Devils have, I don't want to say they've clinched because they technically have not, but it would be the most epic proportion to get knocked out of second or third place. You're pretty much, barring getting Meier up to speed immediately and starting winning these games. And the Devils lost by 1 to Toronto. I get they were without Tavares and O'Reilly, but they won because of 2 mistakes by the Devils' brand new players get used to the system. So it's really not that big of a deal. The Devils dominated the first period. Just looks like worlds better. If you could get that team for 60 minutes, which has been a problem all year, but if you could get this team for 60 minutes, which you expect with Meier to eventually get used to the system, this team might make a run. Right now, I don't know what to expect from this team in the playoffs. If you ask me right this second, are they going to get knocked out in the first round or are they going to go on a long run? I'm just going to say maybe to anything. They could win the cup, Sam. They could get knocked out in the first round. Anything in between.
I'm playing the staring game with you.
I'm trying to figure out what you're doing here. What as of right now, right this second, Sam, what would be your prediction for the playoffs? Like, how far do you think this team can and will go?
Third round.
You think they can get to the third round, or you think they will get to the third round?
Will.
Why?
Well, I mean, a lot has to happen. A lot has to happen. I mean, a lot of negative fans like Steve Engel, but he's a Ranger fan. He's saying first round exit. A lot of fans are saying first round exit because that's the conventional wisdom. Young team, first time in the playoffs in a while. They're going to get bounced. Their offense is not the problem. Their offense is fine. As a matter of fact, it beefed up on offense. That's why Tom Fitzgerald made the trade. He got the best available forward on NHL trade deadline with the most potential. Now, with that said, it all comes to defense and goaltending. I think, this is just my opinion, defensively, I think the players are fine. I think Kevin Ball has played himself into the lineup as that guy that we've always wanted, a stopper. I mean, he was using his body yesterday, throwing big checks, clean checks, and stretching out, blocking shots. I thought Kevin Ball was that guy with depth, and Damon Severson has now transferred himself as that rental right now, a homegrown rental, let's say, so to speak. So I think defensively, the personnel's there. Goaltending, I think Vanacek needs to, down the stretch, I think they need to sit him, not because he sucks or I don't like him or whatever. I think Schmidt can shoulder the workload, because Vanacek is up there in the amount of games he's played in his career in one season, and a well-rested Vitek Vanacek for the playoffs would do wonders for the New Jersey Devils. And to answer your question, I think their speed kills, and I know a lot of other teams really bulked up, but I think their speed is just so fast, and they can play that unsustainable game that you were referring to, a Lindy system, during the playoffs because it's 7 games. They can, I don't think other teams in a 7-game series could actually keep up with the Devils. Most of them I don't think can. I'm a little bit worried that teams like Boston that beefed up, Toronto that beefed up, what does that mean? I don't know. I think they could get to the third round, but not to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Is it because you're worried about that team that they face in that third round, that Atlantic team, whether it's Boston, or Tampa, or Toronto?
I think the first two rounds will wear down the New Jersey Devils. It all depends how many games they play, too. If they come out of the gate, round one, win it in a sweep or 5 games, they're going to be looking really good for round two. I just think that by the third round, I think experience and I think the fatigue will take over a little bit, but I think it's the experience. I mean, the Devils have experienced players like Palat, but if you look at Boston, that's a lot of experience there. You look at Carolina, I think Carolina is the team to beat. I don't think it's Boston. I think it's Carolina because they didn't have to do much at deadline, and look at their coach. I think right now I would rank Carolina just based on if you had the Woo power rankings, I would put Carolina 1, Boston 2, and the Devils 3. Maybe Toronto over the Devils. I'm not sure yet.
I mean, so here's the thing, is that the rankings of the Devils and the Maple Leafs depends entirely on goaltending. If you get last night Vanacek, the Maple Leafs are better. If you get last night Samsonov, the Maple Leafs are better. If you get November Vanacek and November Samsonov, the Devils are better. If you get January Vanacek, the Devils are better. Vanacek's having kind of a rough stretch here, and that's going to be my next article. Probably going to go up either tonight right after the podcast or tomorrow morning. Vanacek has been below average. He's been average on an overall sense. He's been below average when it comes to stopping those big chances. And say what you will about, those shots are hard. The Devils are leaving them out to dry, blah, 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 blah. You can't allow 3 goals on 5 shots. The Devils are suppressing shots a lot. And it's leading to big chances because it's a 2-on-1 or it's a guy left out in front. But Vanacek has to adjust. He has to figure out, okay, they're not going to allow me to get peppered, but there are going to be some big chances. And he made some saves last night. I'm not going to take that away from him. Do I think he was the reason the Devils lost last night? No. I've said that multiple times. Do I think that he gave them a chance to win? Also, not really. That Matthews shot, I get it. He's one of the best snipers in the league. It's a power play, yada, yada, yada. But you got to do something. You didn't make the stop on Marner, and Marner had a really great deke and great. And again, if I take those 3-4 goals in a vacuum, sure, he's not stopping them, I guess. But he was stopping them before, Sam. And now he's not. So
do me a favor.
You got to figure out why that's happening.
When you do your research for your article, because I'm going to read it on pucksandpitchforks.com, look at the amount of games he's played, minutes, all that, compare that to previous years with Washington. Mm-hmm. Also, games that he's well rested.
I believe, and this is going to be part of it, but is he at a career high already? He's at 41 games.
Well, it's your article. You better do the research. That's why I was asking you to do it. But I haven't looked at it yet.
He's either at a career high or
approaching.
He's like, he's like a game or two off.
But I'll tell you what, I don't see the harm right now arresting some of the Devils on the roster. Like Vanacek, I would even say rest Jack Hughes as well. Because you need a well-rested Jack Hughes in the playoffs. And, as Timo Meier is getting familiar with his new teammates and the system, all that, I just think right now is not the time to put the pedal to the metal. The Devils are in decent position right now to make a playoff, to get a decent playoff spot. I know it's unpopular, but, right now I think a couple of these players are near career highs. And I think their game management, meaning the games they play, needs to be in consideration. Jack Hughes, there's a huge investment in Jack Hughes, 8 years, $64 million. Wouldn't hurt to rest him. I know he's like the face of the league, but you know what? I don't want to burn the guy out. He had a 7-minute shift earlier this season. How much can you ride in Jack Hughes?
Yeah, I mean, that was a while ago, and he's been hurt since then, so he's had plenty of rest with that. I see what you're saying. I think you could rest him mid-game a little bit more, maybe not ride him like Lindy Ruff likes to do. But it's I hate to say this to you, Sam, but you're just wasting your breath because they're not going to do that. That's just not the Lindy Ruff way. I agree with you on the goalie, though. So the next game that Vitek Vanacek plays will be his career high. Will tie his career high in games played, and will be his career high in minutes. He's about 31 minutes away from his career high. But here's my issue: is that so if this is not his career, he's not like way past his career high. Why is he clearly? I don't want to say gassed because that's not the right word, but he's below the level he was before. Sam, his save percentage. Guess what his save percentage is on high danger shots over the past month? Quality shots at 5-on-5.
Please say it's in the 9s. In the 8s?
Nope.
7?
722.
Not good.
Low 7s. Low 700s. And again, these are high quality shots, but for the season, even with that 722, he's over 800. The average goalie's about at 830. He's not doing this team any favors. He's doing well against, quality shots and decent shots and bad shots. But those high quality shots, he's getting beat every time. Not every time, but you know what I mean. He's not making the stops he needs to make. I don't know what the answer is. He's...
Well, you get what you pay for at the same time. I mean, how did the Devils get Vanacek? Flipping picks and throwing a third rounder at Washington.
Yeah, it's true.
It's a great trade, but
he's 7th worst over the past month. So there's 6 goalies who are worse than him over the past month in terms of high danger goals saved above average. And one of those goals is Connor Hellebuyck, who's one of the best goalies in the league. So goalies go through ebbs and flows in a season. I don't think we should overreact. But if you come to me, Sam, and said, hey, I have a time machine, and we started Mackenzie Blackwood in game 1 of the playoffs, I wouldn't slap you to make sure you didn't have a concussion. I would be like, oh, okay. That's weird, but sure, I get it, because if Blackwood comes back, he's going to get that time. If Blackwood comes back with 13 games to go, I think you see a 50-50 split. I think Blackwood gets half the games and Vitek gets half the games. I would imagine that Vanacek has a better run because he's not coming off an injury and he's been the better goalie all year. But if Blackwood comes back and played like he was before the injury, I mean, Lindy has not shown a lot of loyalty, except for the BMW line. But he's benched Bratt when we all thought it was crazy. He's benched veterans when we all thought it was crazy. He's dropped Jack Hughes in line. He's done just about everything. It wouldn't be crazy that after Vitek Vanacek brought this team to where it is now, that he would go with Mackenzie Blackwood in the playoffs. I don't think he's going with Schmid. I don't think there's any chance he goes with Schmid.
Well, right now, I mean, when is Blackwood coming back? Let's start off there.
He's skating.
All right.
He's skating, so, I don't know what the level of his injury is. That's why I said 13 games. Because what 6 games from now, you think that's like 2 or 3 weeks. be skating now. I think that it seemed like a safe timeline in my head, but if he comes anytime after that, if there's only 10 games left, I don't think that's enough time for him to prove himself.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I would start playing Schmid as long as he can, and rotate him with Vanacek till Blackwood comes back. But Blackwood, I'm hoping he's going to be lights out when he comes back. I mean, he's probably the most well-rested goalie on the roster right now because of all these injuries.
I mean, can you imagine if he pulls a Kincaid? Hopefully he doesn't pull a Kincaid because Kincaid was terrible in the playoffs. But
yeah, well, I think he, again, ran out of gas. He stood on his head for 2 months, Kincaid, that year. Well, actually, make that 2.5 months. Because you got half really of April and all of February and March.
Goaltending is an enigma, Sam. That's the thing about goaltending, is it doesn't make any sense. Andrew Hammond was the best goalie in the league for a couple months one year. And it literally led to an entire career just because he kept hanging on because he kept having these little runs. So it lasted until this past season. You see it over and over again with all these players, and I think that the Devils are just hoping that they can get one of these runs out of Vanacek at the right time. Or Blackwood. I think that they're hoping for Vanacek, but I think it could be Blackwood. I bet you the comments are going nuts and saying I'm an idiot, but...
Well, I mean, Devil's Joint says once Blackwood comes back, he will get hurt.
That's fair.
Blackwood's not reliable, and I don't think you should really rely on hope with Blackwood. I think the best bet is we know that Vanacek, when he is well rested, he's a much better goaltender, and Akira Schmid, from a small sample size, can eat up some of these games. So you can have at least Vanacek getting some work in. Because right now it's tuning up for the playoffs. And you want this team to defensively to play better in front of whoever is in net. Doesn't matter who's in net. They've got to play better. And, last night there were some lapses, so to speak. I think it was a team effort on those lapses. I don't think you can – what's nice about, you can't really pinpoint who's the problem on the New Jersey Devils defensively. I honestly think that it's a lot of the issues of last night are all correctable. Like, all right, the Timo Meier, the high stick and the turnover, he's going to learn. Again, coming off an injury, like you said, new system. This is an aggressive system that he's not used to. Plus, it's a different mindset as well. He went from a last place, bottom dweller to a team that's on the up and up and rising, to the playoffs. I mean, I thought Timo Meier's handled himself okay up until this point. I like to see a lot more out of him. It's good that he took responsibility of last night. Following up that question from Ryan Novozinski. And I think that if you give Meier to beginning of April, and once he starts gelling with his line mates, and we don't really know who he best gels with, all we know is he was supposed to be with Heischer, but the Heischer, Mercer, and Tatar line was ripping it up where he started off with Jack Hughes. Meier will find his way. I'm sure of that. But I think the most important thing is they start cleaning up some of their mistakes that keep on happening night in and night out.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to, is they've just made too many mistakes. They've played unsustainable hockey. And not unsustainable in the fact that they can't keep playing this way, but unsustainable in the fact that they can't keep winning this way.
Come
Like,
from
this
behind?
is not – yeah, or blowing leads. Every single game is close because they blow leads or they come from behind. Outside of that, Flyers game that we did the live podcast for, they came to play. They were apparently motivated by the 20th anniversary of the 2003 team and, of course, the 500,000th download episode of the Let's Go Devils podcast. They were listening in the locker room. And it got
definitely.
all kinds of motivated. But you see them lay 7 on Colorado, but then give up 5. You see them, you see them put up, they had 2 different leads against Toronto yesterday, and they lost. They dominate periods and then go into intermission losing. They have to come from behind at the last second. What do they have, 20 come from behind wins this season? Something ridiculous like that?
21?
Yeah, 21 come from behind wins. You can't keep playing this, this Red Bull type of play where it's like everything is high energy, everything is crazy. You gotta just have some of these easy wins along the way because you're gonna burn yourself out. And I think that's kind of the point you're making as well.
Yeah. And I think people need to relax a little bit. Last night's game, again, coming off the West Coast, and what you talked about, Meier and his situation coming off an injury, new system, New Jersey is far different from San Jose. I can tell you that. He's going from, I guess, I don't know what the weather's like in California nowadays. Apparently it's snowing. But Meier is going to take some time to adjust. Again,
yeah.
When I was on hooting and hollering about the NHL trade deadline, I was more of the defense. But you know what? Kevin Ball really kind of he's made an impression on me. He's finally not like Bambi out there. He's actually taking out players. He's using his size.
Who are you talking about?
Kevin Ball.
Yeah.
You look like Bambi out there, with Bambi, the tall, long
I know what Bambi,
legs.
yeah.
Very fragile, But now Kevin Ball is just like he's rolling over people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's great to see. This is exactly what you want to see from Kevin Ball. It's a much better look for the young defenseman, and it kind of makes you think, the Devils gave up Hoytuk and Mukmadulin in the Meier trade. And obviously defensemen were a big part of it because San Jose's defensive prospect system was just atrocious. But you got to think they had to have asked about some of these better ones, right? Ball, Walsh, Vian, obviously Nemitz and Hughes.
They were off the table. I mean, they can ask, but,
I'm sure they did ask.
When you have the leverage like Fitzy did when teams were dropping out, he's like, no.
But Ball's got to be the guy, right? Ball had to be the guy that they were fighting over.
Well, at the same time, all maybe so, but at the same time, when you're in negotiations and I want time to extend Timo Meier, and San Jose is saying no, then no Ball for you.
Which makes no sense. Just why wouldn't you let them talk extension?
I don't know, unless Claude Lemieux is an agent that is impossible to work with, and they were kind of hiding it from them. Good luck with.
We're doing this again.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a long off season.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. But anyway, our next guest, his name is Bryan Murphy of the Sporting News. You can find him on Twitter at Bryan_Murphy10. Bryan, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
Hello, Sam. Hello, Nick. Thank you guys for having me back. I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Nice to talk to you again, Bryan. We got you on this over the summer to talk about some of the Devils' big boos, losing out on Giroux and getting Palat. Now we get you on to talk about getting the big fish this time. They got Timo Meier. Let me just jump right into it. What were your initial thoughts when you saw the Devils with a team and then what they gave up?
It was funny. For the longest time, whenever I was looking at Timo Meier. Oh, when's he going to play next? When when does he play this week? There got to a point where I was instinctively continuously checking the Devils schedule because it just felt like he was going there. It just felt like it was only a matter of time. So I wasn't shocked when I saw the deal made. I thought it made way too much sense for both sides. He's the kind of player, especially for the top six, the Devils needed to put them over the top. They had the prospects. They've got the finances to make it work long-term with him. I was a little surprised at the return. I thought that they would cost a little bit more in order to get him. Especially looking at the prospects. I know Mukhamadullin was kind of the big piece. Obviously, getting a young NHL guy like Fabian Zetterlund was good as well, but I thought that the Sharks were going to ask for a little bit more. So I thought it was a great deal for the Devils, especially if they work out a long-term deal. It just made too much sense for him not to become a Devil.
I agree. And he fits such a perfect hole that the Devils had in their lineup. I think it just makes all the sense in the world. Now we're
Absolutely.
2 games in. We'll call them varied results to be nice to Timo Meier.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. What's your consensus on the fit so far?
I think you need to give it time. I mean, we're 2 games in. This is a guy coming back, not only just joining a new team entirely, but coming back from an injury as well. And as you guys had mentioned earlier, he was the best player last night in the first period by far. I mean, he was creating chances all over. He was the Devils' reason why that they were in control of that game, or at least a big part of it. And then it kind of went away. So I think you're going to have to deal with the ebbs and flows through the first couple of weeks when you have a new addition who is playing in a much different system than he was playing in San Jose. Lindy Ruff likes to play quick. He likes to play to the strengths of his forwards, which is that speed that they have. So it is going to take a little bit for him to get used to. But I think he's too good of a player that fits too well with the makeup of the team to create judgments based off of 2 games. Obviously, take away the positives, take away the negatives. But I think that you guys mentioned they're in a position now where they need until playoffs for him really to fit. And that's when, if it's playoffs and he's still struggling to find a role, still struggling to find those correct line mates, is he going to play with Hischier? Is he going to play with Hughes? Then I think you hit the panic button a little bit. But for now, he's got 2 games under his belt as a Devil. Like I said, it's a completely new team, completely new time zone as well. Like he's got to completely adjust his life. And coming off the injury as well, I wouldn't worry about it. I think we're going to see a lot more of what we saw in the first period against the Maple Leafs out of Timo Meier.
Oh, yeah, and I agree. I think that it's too early, and I wrote about this, that it's too early to panic. But we're talking the world of Twitter, where panic is just kind of part of the deal. So just looking ahead, when you think of the contenders, like the true contenders, the Devils have always been on paper a true contender. They've always been near the top of the league, top 3, top 4 in points percentage. But even me, I've been like, I mean, I don't consider this a Stanley Cup winning like I don't that's not what I think of when I think of this team. And then you get Timo Meier, and even Curtis Lazard to a point. As someone who's looking at this from a more national lens, from a more NHL lens, are you looking at this team now as a legitimate contender?
With the addition of Timo Meier, yes, I think so. I think that this is a team that, when you look at the rest of and obviously the East is a bloodbath, I think if the East wasn't as loaded as it was this year, I think more people would be considering them a Stanley Cup contender. Now, obviously, they're going to have to run through a gauntlet in order to get to the Stanley Cup finals. And then obviously you got to play the finals against whoever comes out of the West. So you never know. But I think the roster, especially with the addition of Timo Meier, just because it felt like that missing piece with this group. They'd gotten all the young guys have now gotten to the point where they're consistent NHLers. It's no longer the rebuild anymore. This team is here and this team is legit. But what's that one piece that's going to put them over the top? I think they did kind of take a first step in that by signing Andre Palat this summer. I think he's going to be a great guy, especially come playoff time. So much success with the Lightning. He's going to be a big player, and I think that was that first step. The addition of Meier, I think they are a legit contender. No one should be surprised if the Devils come out of the East, in my opinion. Will they? That's obviously a different question, considering the state of the conference. It's hard to see who's going to come out of it because there is no easy path for any team. But I do think that they are a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, especially with the addition of Timo Meier. And once we start seeing him clicking with whoever his line mates are going to end up being, is he staying on that line with Jack Hughes? Is he going to get the chance with Nico Hischier? I think once you start to see it, you'll see this is as complete of a team as you're going to find, especially in the Eastern Conference. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if they come out of the East.
I love to hear that. That's great to hear. Bryan, real quick, if you don't mind, that's a great zip up polo you have, or the zip up that you have for the Sporting News. Can you just pull the mic on the other side of the zipper?
Yeah,
I think it's rubbing against it.
No problem.
Yeah, perfect.
Is this better?
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yep. No, that's perfect. I'm sorry to do that to you. I was
no
like,
worries at all.
I feel bad about that. So we talked about kind of why the Devils are contenders. In my opinion, the reason why they might not be is in net. It's so simple every single year. In net. What do they have in net? This year they have Vitek Vanacek, third in the league in wins. He's definitely a major upgrade from what they've had, but over the past couple of weeks, he hasn't stopped those really, really good shots. Are you worried about the Devils' goalies?
I wouldn't say there's concern. I wouldn't say I'm completely worried. I do think that it is the weakness on the team. And if there is going to be something that holds them back in the playoffs, it's going to be the goaltending. Because you look at Vanacek, and as you guys were talking about, this is a guy that's played a ton this year. He's going to set a career high in starts. He's going to set a career high in minutes. So you never know when a guy has gone through that kind of the first full NHL season as a full-time starter, getting more minutes and more playing time than he has in his career. What's he going to be like at the end of the year? And so I think seeing what we've seen out of him now, I think it's more so just the ebbs and flow. Every goalie is going to go through a trend where they're not seeing the puck as well as they have been all season. I think we're seeing that a little bit with Vanacek. You saw it with the Matthews goal. Yeah, he's the best sniper in the league that's not named Alex Ovechkin. But at the same time, you'd like your goalie to make that save. So I'm not totally worried about them. I know that Vanacek in the playoffs in the past, it has not been good. It's only 3 games. But still, a 425 GAA for his playoff pass is not great. Certainly not what you want to see, and not having as the number one guy going into the playoffs. But I think if he's in front of a different team, I would like to see Vanacek's workload decrease a little bit throughout the rest of the season. I know Blackwood is hurt. I know you guys mentioned you would like to see him split time, whether that be with Schmid or be with Blackwood. I think that would be a huge benefit for Vanacek as well. Get him to get some rest so that way he's much more equipped for the playoffs. So do I see it as a weakness and a concern? Not really. It's funny. I think if you asked me this last year, I would have said yes, because we have seen the teams that have won Stanley Cups have gotten dominant goaltending pretty much every year. That wasn't the case last year. Obviously, the Colorado Avalanche were a much deeper team, forward line on defense than the Devils are, than most teams are this year. So they could rely on average NHL goaltending, and they won the Cup. I mean, they had Pavel Francouz play in the Western Conference Finals, and he didn't lose a game. But with that said, it did kind of show that you do not need to necessarily always get the dominant Andrei Vasilevsky's run, Braden Holtby runs, Jordan Binnington runs. If you've got a goalie that's going to be good and you've got a rest of the team, which I think the Devils do complete up and down the lineup, you just need to get that average goaltending. At least above average, I should say. I shouldn't say average goaltending. It should be above average. So there are certain concerns I totally understand, especially the way Vanacek has played as of late. But I don't think it's as nearly big of a concern as it end up will be come playoff time.
Do you think that this Devils team is kind of built like Colorado, right? Like you want 4 forward lines, 3 defensive lines?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question about the goaltending, just in general. The Devils do a really good job of suppressing shots as a whole. Vanacek doesn't face a lot of shots, but when he does face shots, they're really good. Do you think that maybe that system, that thought process on the defense, because that's just the Lindy Ruff way. His defensemen need to have a lot of work ethic. They need to have a lot of endurance, but they are primed to make mistakes because that's just how the system works. Do you feel like that's a system? Can you go boom or bust in the playoffs?
It's always tough to. It's really probably going to come down to who they're playing. Like, is it going to be a team that they can rely on not suppressing the chances? And if you're playing a team like the Maple Leafs who capitalize on those opportunities like that, I mean, the Devils saw it. You make a few mistakes and all of a sudden the puck's in the back of your net. But I think there's other teams out there. You look at a team like the Rangers, they don't score a ton at 5-on-5. So if you're giving up chances to a Rangers team, that might be much more okay than if you're say a Bruins team, if you're going to be consistently giving up scoring chances to the Bruins, you're going to lose. So I think it really is going to come down on who they are matched up against and what offense they are going against. It's never a bad thing when you have a ton of shots being suppressed by your defenseman, when your goalie's not seeing a ton. It's never a bad thing. But when he is seeing those chances, what are they? Are they against, like you said, are they high danger scoring chances? And are you constantly giving them one up, and is the team good enough that they're going to capitalize if you give them the opportunities? Or are you playing against a team that relies more so on getting more pucks to the net and the fact that they're not able to take advantage of those chances when they do get it? So I do think it might be one of those things where Lindy Ruff may have to adjust come playoff time depending on who that opponent is. But I do think depending on who that offense that the defense is going against may dictate whether or not Vanecek sees as many shots or not.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. You kind of talked about, the pucks going in, the offense, and the Devils are getting good offense from the players they haven't been getting it from, the third and fourth line. Andre Palat had a really good game last night. Eric Haula had 2 goals last night, which is unheard of. And then the game before, the quote-unquote BMW line, McLeod, Bastian, and Wood played really well, and they've been playing really well over the past 2 weeks. But you haven't been getting the same level of production out of Nico Hischier. Nico Hischier's been good because his line's been good. Dawson Mercer and Tomas Tatar have been really good. But that Jack Hughes has not been the MVP level that he's been for most of the season. Are you at all worried about the top 2 Devils centers? Or you think this is just you can't score 2 points a night every night kind of thing, an ebbs and flows kind of thing going back to that?
Yeah, I would most certainly lean towards the latter. I think it's a long season. Not everyone can be Connor McDavid and dominate every single night and light up the score sheet. I think you're going to have lulls, and I think it's a good thing now that we're seeing it where Hischier and Hughes haven't produced, and the bottom 2 lines are picking up the slack. I think I think you take that as a really good thing, because if they weren't producing and then you weren't getting anything out of the bottom of the lineup, then all of a sudden you've got a depth issue where you pretty much are saying if you shut down our top 2 lines, that's it, night's over, because we're not getting anything. So I think it's a good thing that we're seeing the third line and the fourth line being able to produce. And obviously they didn't get the win against the Maple Leafs, but they're kind of picking up a little bit of slack. We're still a month away from the playoffs. If this continues on and all of a sudden we're at the end of March heading into April and it's grind time and we're still seeing these 2 kind of taking a little bit of a back seat in the results, then I would be a little bit more concerned. We still got a month left in the season. If there was going to be a time, it's never necessarily a good time, and I would say this is later in the season, you would probably like for your top 2 centers to slightly regress a little bit, but I wouldn't be too concerned. There's still plenty of time for them to get it fixed. And ultimately, as long as they get everything figured out and everything gels in, I would say, the 2 weeks, maybe the week leading up to the playoffs, they're going to be fine.
So I got a couple extra minutes. Let me ask you this. Just in general, what storyline are you most excited to follow over the last month of the season? Ooh, doesn't have to be Devils related. Just any storyline that you're really excited to watch.
I honestly think it might be the Sabres and the Senators, and where do they end up at the end of the season? Because it is 2 teams that are on that back end of that rebuild. They're right there. I would still say both teams are a step back. They still have got another year. I think they both need to add a piece, but no one expected either of these teams a few months ago to be competing for the playoffs. And now all of a sudden they're both knocking on the door. And I think it's really, really interesting because now all of a sudden you have the team, the Islanders, the Capitals, the Penguins, who are always there. They're always in the playoff hunt. Now all of a sudden they might be on the outside looking in. Is this kind of a changing of the guard where these teams that have relied on their older stars, they're not getting it done anymore, and now we're getting to the point where these young teams are coming up and they're no longer, hey, we got a couple of young pieces we're going to need to develop. No, now they're knocking on the door and they want to make the playoffs. So the Sabres have consistently been, in my opinion, the most entertaining team in hockey this year. Do they play necessarily the style that's going to win in the playoffs? No, because it's that run and gun. We're going to beat you 5-4, 6-5 kind of games. But they're exciting to watch. I think the Senators are extremely exciting to watch, especially after the addition of Jacob Chychrun. That was a team that everyone thought that was the favorite that, oh, no, they're going to make the playoffs this year after they added DeBrincat and Giroux. But they needed that top 4 defenseman. And they got it in Chikrin, and I think he's a great fit in there. I'm very interested to see if either of those teams are able to knock a Penguins, an Islanders, maybe even a Panthers out of the playoffs. Will they do it? I don't know. Even if they do, how far do they get? Probably maybe to the second round. But those are the two teams that I think are really, really exciting to see. Honestly, the entire wild card race in the East is just going to be fun to watch the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I said earlier that I think that the Devils are going to take a couple losses as they get used to a new lineup. So I think the race for the Metro might be, I don't want to call it over because it's close still, but I think Carolina's just too good to lose enough games for the Devils to make up what they're going to lose when, getting Meier and Lazar, integrated into this lineup. And you're probably, like you said, going to have to rest Vanacek. So you're going to, Schmid is good, but, he's young. So, there's some inconsistency there. So I completely agree with you. I think that looking at the bottom and seeing the race for, even though, like you said, the Islanders went from, I think, Don Luszczyszyn of The Athletic, his model had them when they traded for Horvat. So including that bump, I think they had like a 17% chance to make the playoffs. Now it's up to like 53.
Yeah.
So they're more likely to make it than not. And Washington's the team that just tanked. I think they're at like 5%. But like you said, there's all these teams that are primed to make this great run to the playoffs. So it's a lot of fun. This is going to be a fun last month of the season. Brian Murphy, the Sporting News, I want to give you a couple minutes just to kind of plug what you got going on. What are some stories that you got coming up that you're really excited about and what Devils fans might be interested in?
Yeah, we have a ton of content coming. Obviously, with the playoffs looming ahead, we're full steam ahead. Trade deadline in the rearview mirror, but we've got a few records that could be broken. Obviously, with the Boston Bruins, they're chasing both the points and wins record, which is going to be really, really interesting to see where, do they end up breaking the record by the Canadiens and then the one by the Red Wings and Lightning. So we'll definitely be tracking along with stuff like that. We'll also be following along. How do some of these teams look after the deadline? One of the team like the Devils, how are they going to look come playoff time? Has Timo Meier completely adjusted? Teams like the Maple Leafs, where they brought in 6 new names, how are they going to look? So we're going to have a lot of stuff looking and analyzing a team's performances as we go into the real grind part of the season here, leading up into the playoffs. We've also going to have some college hockey stuff. You talk about the Devils, Luke Hughes in Michigan. I mean, they're going to be right there for the college hockey championship. Obviously, he's going to go and join New Jersey. Hopefully it's coming off of a Frozen 4 win, but we'll have coverage with that. And so obviously getting to see the future of the Devils there. And he's such an exciting player to watch. So I'm looking forward to him on the biggest college hockey stage. I know they got to the Frozen 4 last year. We'll see if they're able to get to that natty this year. But yeah, just a lot of good stuff. You can check us out at sportingnews.com. And we'll be with plenty of the NHL, plenty of exciting stuff. We mentioned those playoff races. We'll be having all the scenarios and everything for which teams could make it, which teams won't make it. It's going to be an exciting time. This month leading up into the playoffs, it should be really entertaining. Much better, especially in comparison to last year, where it felt like the Eastern Conference by February, January was already decided. That's not the case at all this year. It's going to be an exciting time.
Sporting News, a legendary publication, still putting out phenomenal content all these years later. You don't need a magazine, folks. Check out the internet. There's some great stuff on there.
Exactly.
Brian Murphy, thank you so much. We're going to look out for that content. We'll retweet some of it from the Twitter page. We really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us. We're excited to see the playoff race. And let's go Devils. Brian, we'll have you on again soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you guys as always. And yeah, that looking like it's going to be Devils Rangers, which is going to bring the fireworks come postseason time. I know that might not be, the best matchup looking at it with they've got a good team there, but you're going to have to beat the best in order to be the best. So it'll be an interesting time.
It's going to be a great matchup. It's going to be exciting and entertainment, but I hate it.
I don't blame you. Whoever comes out.
We couldn't face them in the second round. We couldn't grit our teeth against the Islanders or the Capitals or the Penguins. Like, we had to do it right against the top rival right away.
It really is a shame that one of those two teams is going to be out before the first round or after the first round. It's going to be a shame to see one of those. Hopefully for you guys, it's not the Devils.
we are hoping. Thanks, Bryan.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Brian. That's Brian Murphy of the Sporting News. You can find him on Twitter at Brian_Murphy10. He talked about Devils Rangers. Emotionally, physically, I would be spent after the first round.
And that's the thing, is they might be too. You've seen that.
Yeah.
You saw that with the Flyers in 2012. The emotions of beating the Penguins in that first round, getting over that hump, beating your rivals to do it. And then you face a Devils team that they underestimated for 2 games, and then when they tried to turn it back on, it was too late.
Well, even the Devils themselves. I mean, you know, a 7-game series against Florida, going past the Flyers on Marty's 40th birthday. And then you got the Rangers, which that was a tight series. I mean, it just boiled down to, you know, where the puck's bouncing in some respect. And then you're playing the Kings all of a sudden. And then you're going, you know, all the way out to California. It was a long-distance trip. I mean, you get burnt out.
Here's the thing about that Kings series that I think history has not been fond of. People legitimately, like the national narrative, after the Devils went down 3-0, was, can the Devils be the first team to come back from 3-0 in the Stanley Cup final and win? And yeah, I think that there was some, because that was the year, didn't LA do that to Vancouver? Or no, they dominated. No, they were the first 8 seed to make the Stanley Cup. That's what they were.
Yep.
But people were saying, is this the team to do it after they went down 3-0? Because they lost the first 2 games in overtime. Both games they lost in overtime.
Yeah.
And yeah, they got drubbed in game 3. What was it, 6-1 or something crazy? But they won game 4, brought it back to New Jersey. They won, right? They won game 5 in New Jersey.
Yep.
And they went back to LA. We know what happened there. The big penalty that kind of ruined the game and ruined the series, but
it's really a shame that it actually boiled down to that, because I mean it was just I'm still mad because Bernier should have never got the penalty in the first place. That it should have been an icing. That I guess the refs were too busy, being spectators.
I mean, it should have been a penalty on the hit on Giante. He got cross-checked face first.
Well, yeah. But sometimes, I mean, you go back, I'll tell you, if you want to see something really bad, go back to 2001 Stanley Cup Finals Game 7. There were probably, and again, I was drinking that night. I was at Champs in Menlo Park Mall. But I remember counting like 15, 16 no-call icings. And you see the clock just going down and down and down as the Devils are trying to, make a comeback, and the Colorado Avalanche were just zinging the puck down the ice, and just no icing. Like, how's that not icing? And the Devils it was just awful. Go back to the tape, the video.
And that's something that's kind of funny how you look at like different eras. Like, they never not call icing now. Like, they call icing too much. Like, even when it's like, Miles Wood running down the ice trying to stop an icing, they'll still call icing. Because too many people were getting hurt on icing plays. But,
well, back in those days,
there's swallowing your whistle, and then there's changing the trajectory of the game.
Yeah, I mean, back in those days, you had to touch the puck.
Yeah.
Now it's I think the rule nowadays is good, because to avoid, that
the unnecessary hits. Yeah.
Yeah, or collisions by accident, that kind of thing, unintended consequences. But I don't know, Nick. It was. I always felt that the Devils got hosed by the refs. Always, but then again, look what happened to Lindy Ruff in 1999. Brett Hull's skate in the crease.
Yep.
A rule's a rule. Like, did it really affect the play? Probably not. But A rule's a
rule,
rule.
and he scored a goal.
Yeah.
It's like the offsides. If the play is offsides, it's no goal. It doesn't matter how much it affects the play or not.
And then back in '97, you want to talk about Devils-Rangers playoff series, round 1. How many goals did the Devils got called back in that series? It was I think it was a 5-game series against the Rangers in '97. I think probably like 6.
Too far back for me. I don't.
They literally had like 6 or 7 goals called back in that series for stupid things like I don't know, Doug Gilmore's. I don't know if he was on the team at that time, but assuming it was, like Doug Gilmore's skate lace just happened to be a millimeter over the line in the goal crease, and no goal. You know, it was like really bad.
Yeah, listen, it's
actually, if I'm not mistaken, if you want to go really, if I'm not mistaken, I think what brought replay to the NHL, is it replay? Something with Laurie Boschman. Yeah, the replay. I believe the replay, if it's a goal or not, was it Laurie Boschman where the goal should have counted, but it went through the net or something years ago?
I don't remember.
Anyway, I'm just going back in history.
I don't know, Sam. I got nothing left, so I'm letting you go. Go on.
Oh.
9:30. We're right there.
Well,
it's nap time.
I'll have to look it up. I thought it was Laurie Boschman that had a goal called back, and Lou fought it for whatever. And then as soon as he got replay, then the Devils started getting screwed.
And you knew that was going to happen.
Of course.
But to be fair, the Devils went to court to keep their coach in a playoff series, and it ended up helping them win. So, have another donut. So you win some, you lose some. Although trying to suspend the Devils coach, Bettman. The worst thing that ever happened to Bettman was the Devils winning in '95. The worst thing that could have happened. And then them going on to win in 2000, 2003, solidifying the Devils in New Jersey, was he must curse the day.
Here it is.
Curse the day.
Here it is. It was Laurie Boschman, that goal that was called back. It was disallowed, enabling the Pittsburgh Penguins in the playoffs. That forces a Game 7. Now this is all coming back to me. Yeah. And I think it was that play, that disallowed goal that I think eventually brought in replay at some point. I have to look that up. So don't quote me on that. But yeah, I'll have to look that up. I bet you Stan Fischler would know. We should get Stan Fischler on.
Let's do it. He just got a new job.
Yeah.
He's now the Islanders reporter for the Hockey News.
Amazing. How old is he now? 90? 91?
He's got to be. I think so.
Send him an email. I should send him an email. Stan, what are you doing nowadays?
Send him an email. Let's see. He's here right now. He's back here, or is he doing it from Israel?
I don't know. We should have him. We should have Stan Fischler at American Whiskey.
Let's go. Yeah, I'm sure. I bet you still hitting the sauce.
Well, I'll have to. Is there another Devils Islanders game at the Rock? Well, let's talk off air. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Brian Murphy, Sporting News, for coming on. Now a good friend of the podcast. He gives me a confidence that, hey, just be patient. Things will be fine. Also, I want to thank everybody on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Twitter Live. And, Nick, do you have anything to plug before we go?
Yeah, I'm going to have that VTech Vantage article tomorrow morning. I have the Everybody Calm Down About Timo Meier story that's up on Pucks and Pitchforks right now. Dave Williams, he did a story just recapping the deadline. So that's up on Pucks and Pitchforks. David Holliday wrote about the Devils' blown lead yesterday in Toronto. Jersey Joe talked about Meier and Lazar, how this trade's going to make them tougher. Vinny Parisi's been writing up a storm, talking about Dawson Mercer breaking records. It's and then we have plenty, if you want to go back and read all of our trade deadline coverage, we have a ton of that. I just want to thank everybody. We had well over 430,000 views in February, the shortest month of the year. Everybody was going to pucksandpitchforks.com for trade deadline coverage, and we really appreciate your dedication to the craft.
Yeah, I want to thank our podcast listeners. The downloads are still at a record pace, Nick, with or without Timo Meier. So can't thank you enough. Got a couple things to plug before we go. I'll be there Sunday for Devils Carolina at American Whiskey. Sorry I couldn't make it yesterday. Had some things going on at the last second. Also, March 30th, Devils Rangers. Big event at American Whiskey. Shorts Guy and I will be there, both for Game Day Live and Devils After Dark. And April 13th, Stagehouse Tavern, 1099, Route 22 East in Mountainside, New Jersey. Last game of the season before the Devils take on the Washington Capitals. Our Let's Throw in a Big Party. Woo! Last game of the year, regular season. And we're going to be tuning up for the playoffs. We're going to use that time to tune up for the playoffs. And, that's it. So, thank you, everybody. Dropping the podcast at midnight. Keep it here. Game Day Live tomorrow. And Devils After Dark. It should be good. Playing the Capitals tomorrow in Washington. It's going to be a good one. And also, go to pucksandpitchforks.com for all of your Devils needs. Nick, thank you very much. To everybody, till next time, let's go Devils.